Well, it has been a little while since you've been able to come on the show. So if you don't mind, could you tell the audience who you are and how you got interested in what you are interested in?
I'm interested in making people healthy. That's what it's all about. That's what I dedicate my 24 hours a day to. It's funny, you just can't escape it. No matter where you go, no matter who you speak to, whether it's a party or a taxi driver, you end up talking about this, because you feel like you have a, like a treasure and you want to share it with people. I think one
Yeah.
of the things you didn't say in the intro, which is maybe the most important thing right now, is that we're building OwnaHealth. So I should update that, but Ona it's really what we're working on now, and trying to bring this to the masses. So you know, the, to go back to your question, like where am I coming from? Well, as you mentioned, I'm an endocrinologist. I've been treating diabetes for 20 plus years, almost 25 years, and obesity, metabolic disease. Not so much before. I was only focused on diabetes because I didn't realize that I actually know how to treat obesity too now. But before, I didn't. I didn't know how to treat obesity. This is so interesting. You're making me realize something. Back in like 2013 or so, some people came to me and said, "We want to build a diabetes and obesity center." It was a bariatric surgeon and other people. And I was like, well, that's great, but I only know how to treat diabetes. Like, I have no idea how to treat obesity, because that was me in my old self who didn't know, how to really treat diabetes, right? So if you only know how to use drugs, then you don't understand how to treat obesity. Now, thinking about it right now as I'm speaking to you, I think that's pretty funny that was my response. I was like, I don't know how to treat obesity. And I didn't. I didn't. What were my tools for treating obesity? There was no Ozempic. There were no medications that were useful, and I had no idea. And I knew that telling people to eat less, move more didn't work. So I said to the guys, I'm not going to build a center where I can't really contribute besides the diabetes part. So I think
Wow.
that's kind of ironic and kind of emblematic of what a normal endocrinologist feels like until these drugs came out recently. But, you know, not understanding the pathophysiology of obesity and diabetes, and not realizing that diabetes is clearly just an obvious symptom of insulin resistance, and in a continuum of obesity, or not. It's just another symptom of insulin resistance, right? So once you treat the insulin resistance, it all gets better. So anyway,
Wow.
so
Well, I loved your presentation at Low Carb Denver, and the patient profile that you showed there really was a great way to kind of see what you're talking about here. And you showed your patient, was it HK? Was that his name?
yeah, you still
Uh,
remember him. Great memory.
HK. Oh, I love that guy. Yeah, he's great. And you showed him, and all the things that he had been diagnosed with, and you showed him as a controlled, kind of case study. Like this is everything he's dealing with. He's doing okay, and your definition of what okay was in the past is so unacceptable for you now, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's absolutely, what we accept people being on 6, 8 drugs, and as long as their A1C is okay, we're like, oh, this patient is well controlled. Well, no, actually, we could do things a lot better. So it really matters how we treat patients. We're not just looking at a number, but it's the whole picture of metabolic syndrome. We want to get rid of it. And the good thing is, when you treat that, as I just said, you treat everything at the same time, which
Yeah.
is, it's the way I think we should be treating metabolic disease.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you're doing amazing work to get that message out there. Again, we've got this publication that we can talk about here in a second. But I think about how many people, how many doctors in your position will never get this information. How was it that you were able to find this information to begin with?
Oh, it was just a combination of things, but I have a lifelong friend. Her name is Jessica Apple. She had we actually started. I was the medical director for her a website that she started called sweetlife.org, that ran until like last year. And she and her brother were always talking to me about low carb. And I think I might have said this before, but I didn't quite understand it. I was like, yeah, of course we should eat low carb. Yes, we should avoid sugars, but then I really think what clicked it for me was Sarah Hallberg's video, her famous, her lecture on how to reverse diabetes by ignoring the guidelines. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And I was like, what is going on here? My head was spinning. And then I just started reading, and then here I am 9 years later.
Yeah. Wow.
Just
I'm trying to think of an analogy of some kind. It's almost like if you were like driving a car that had square wheels or something, like it just wouldn't really work. But like if you chose to drive cars because you love to drive cars, you'd be endlessly frustrated. And then like if one day somebody switched the wheels out and they were round and all of a sudden the car like worked, like I don't know, maybe that's a stupid analogy, but how did it feel?
I love it.
This is just on the
Good
fly.
one.
How did it feel to find that information and know that like the reason why you got into medicine was to help people? It's what you love to do 24/7, like you said, whether it's a taxi driver or your patients, to find that information and realize you could actually help people heal. What was that like?
Oh, it continues to be thrilling. I have to say, it continues to be unbelievable because it's so simple. It's almost embarrassing. It's so simple that, and you see people suffering so much unnecessarily. So the impact you can have, it makes your life, it gives so much meaning to every single day, right? So it's really a privilege really to be a doctor in a way, because patient after patient, you can actually, if you can get them to listen, you need that part, of course, that you can only control so much, right? But
Wow. So the wording that you used, the first word you said, thrilling. You said it's a privilege to be a doctor. I'm guessing that if I went out and just found 100 random doctors, I'm going to guess that probably not very many of them are going to say that their life is thrilling. Yours is thrilling finding this information.
well, you know what? I have to say that it is. Every day I have, it's cheap thrills because it works. It's not me who came up with this, right? I'm lucky that I was able to adopt it and use it in my life, in my practice, in my, by changing my career. But yeah, it just works every single time. So anybody who's willing to listen and who wants to, you kind of have to be ready for it. It's not something, people have to have an open ear to it and be at a point in life where they're ready to make a change, a commitment. So clearly it's not for everybody, but those people that really need it, I am currently working in the Bronx with the most challenged population, really. Oh my God, I can't even tell you, when I hear story after story of these people that are going through such hard times, and yet they're desperate for somebody to listen to them and to give them something that works. So the compliance I'm getting there is amazing. I never expected that it would be so much higher than I would have thought, because there are ways of doing low carb. It just goes to prove that you do not have to be wealthy to do low carb. You do not have to be eating, all this expensive foods and the best, cuts of meat, etc. No, there are ways of doing this that are affordable and are just and can be life-changing. So people are doing fantastic, just fantastic. And I think that's why I'm like beside myself with excitement, because it is these people that are not exposed to these kind of options normally, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So, and because it really is so simple, and because medications are expensive, and then they run out of Medicaid, and then they don't have the medication, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and this is something that's in their hands, and all you have to do is give them this tool. So this is what is happening now, that I'm learning and seeing with my own eyes. So
That's amazing.